guys. So I want to do more customary conversions, and remember, it's the customary conversions that are not gallon man. And we're going to do a couple of review from what we looked at for the last video. And then we're going to start, I want to show you how to work backwards with them. So again, I'm just going to have, you know, 2 different colored pens. If you want to do a pencil and a pen, of 2 different colored pens, a pencil and a marker, whatever you have. But I need you in your math notebook where it's a blank on both sides. So I went ahead and just so I'd have a clean page, I wrote down the conversions again off of that reference sheet. And remember, if we were typically in school, you know, you would have the conversion sheet and we'd practice finding what we need from the conversion sheet, from the reference sheet. But we don't have that. So I will upload it again for you. So it'll be there for you guys if you want to take a look at it. But I am going to ask you if you can do me a favor and just be in your notebook. So what I'm asking is that you have 2 blank papers, can't talk, side by side. So I went ahead and did over here. I have conversions at the top. And remember, if you need to pause me if I'm talking or writing too fast, then do so. And then we're going to list some of the customary conversions. So I'll hold it right here, and it might be more beneficial if you pause the video, write down everything you need, and then unpause the video. Whenever you're done writing the customary conversions, I skipped like 3 lines here, and then I just wrote some of the time conversions out too, because we need to practice finding the conversion that we need. So when you're totally ready, which means if you need to focus more on the customary conversions, writing those down, please pause it. If you need to focus more on the time conversions, please pause it. Make sure you have everything written down so that your page matches my page. And we're going to do some more practice over here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll label this as lesson 6. And then I'm going to just put customary and time conversions practice. And I know that, you know, this is a different notebook, so if the heading's kind of long and you take up two lines, don't worry about it. It's totally fine. So go ahead and pause me if you need to pause me. And when you're ready, I want to do 3 review questions that mimic how we did it for lesson 5. So let's say that this is going to be our review question 1. So my little Q is for question review Q1, review question 1. Let's say for the review question 1, let's say I'm giving you 7 tons is equal to some amount of pounds. So remember, when they're giving you 2 units of measurement, this tells me that we need to go find the conversion for tons and pounds. So this is obviously our missing piece. This is what we need to figure out. But this right here, you guys, gives us a good starting point. So I'll come over here. And if I'm giving you tons and pounds, we need to find one conversion that has tons or ton on one side and pound or pounds on the other side. So hopefully you saw right here is where it's giving you ton and pounds, which tells me that this right here, you guys, is the conversion that I would use. So I will just be moving right over here, and I'm going to write down the conversion that I need, which is 1 ton equals 2,000 pounds. So remember, we can't start with pounds because that's where we have our missing piece, and we need to start with tons. But the big thing for these types of conversions, you guys, because it's not King Henry, it's not gallon man, this is where we need to line up our units, which means if we're going to start at tons, I can't write tons under pounds because they have 2 different endings, 2 different unit names. And I know that this doesn't have an S on it for tons, but remember, because I know Mrs. Williams has talked to you about singular and plural, singular is just 1, so 1 ton. Plural means more than one, so 7 tons. I know that this doesn't technically have the S there, but ton and tons, they go together. They're the same unit. So I'm going to take these 7 tons and I'm going to stick them right under 1 ton. I'm going to line up my units. We're trying to figure out how many pounds would be equal to 7 tons. But I can see that if I'm going to go from 1 ton to 2,000 pounds, I'm going from a 1 to a 2,000, my number is obviously getting bigger. 2,000 is obviously bigger than 1. And if my number is getting bigger, then that means that I'm going to multiply. So here, you guys, is where you would mentally ask yourself, well, what times 1 is going to get me to 2,000? But 1 times 2,000 is going to get me to 2,000. Now, here's where things are going to be a little bit different today, because here in this review question, we are starting at tons, just like we did up top. We were moving across. So we're still starting with tons. We're still ending with pounds. So because we're still moving from tons to pounds, we're still going in the same direction. So we're still going to multiply by 2,000. I don't expect you to be able to do it in your head. I know there's a great handful of you that you already know your answer, but if you can't see it, that's fine. Take your bigger number, 2,000. Put that number up top. Take your smaller number. So here is 7. I'm going to put the smaller number on the bottom. Well, 7 times 0 is 0. 7 times 0 is 0, 7 times 0 is 0, and 7 times 2 is 14. So in 7 tons, there are 14,000 pounds. I really would like to do 2 more review questions with you. So let's call this review Q for question number 2. Review Q2. Let's say 3 years is equal to some amount of days. Well, obviously, this is where we need to figure out. This is where we would have a blank. But these 2 units, years and days, you guys, that tells me what conversion I'm looking for. So when I show you the conversions, I want you to find me one that's talking about years and days. I hope you were able to see that this says year and this says days, which tells me, because they're talking about the same 2 units that we're talking about, that this is the conversion that we would use, you guys. So right underneath my review Q2, I'm going to write down the conversion. 1 year equals 365 days. Now, the biggest piece of advice that I can give you is to line up your units. We obviously can't start with days because that's where we have our missing piece, which means we're going to start here at 3 years. So I'm going to line up year with years, okay, because that's the same unit name. And we're trying to figure out how many days that's equal to. Well, if you can see, we're going from a 1 in the 1 year over to 365 days. Well, 365 days is obviously bigger than the number 1. And because we're going to a bigger number, we're multiplying. So I know that 1 times 365 is 365. But I want you to realize, because this is where things are going to be different later, we're still going from years to days on the bottom. We're still starting with years. And I know that we're starting with years because that's where I had the number and the words. Okay, I can't start with days. I'm not going from days to years. I'm starting where I have the number and the words. I'm starting with years and I'm going from years to days. So because that's the same way I moved on the top, years to days, then I'm still multiplying. Whatever I do up top, I'm going to do on the bottom. So I know that when I multiply, I want to put the big number on the top because this is going to be 3 years times 365 days a year to figure out how many days there are in 3 years. But I don't want to put 3 digits on the bottom because we don't do that. So I'm going to take these 3 digits, my big number, and I'm going to multiply by the small number, and right now the small number is 3. So 3 times 5 is 15. 5's on the bottom. Oops, 1's up top on a plate. 3 times 6 is 18, and 18 plus 1 is 19. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 1 more is 10. So that tells me that in 3 years, there are 1,095 days. All I'm doing is multiplying, you guys. Let's do one more review question, and then we'll look at 6 for today. So let's say for our last review question, let's say in 3 miles, actually, you know what? I'm going to put review Q for question and then 3, okay? Let's say 3 miles is equal to some amount of yards. Well, this is clearly where I have my blank, but this miles and YDS yards, that tells me what I'm looking for. So let's find ourselves a conversion that has both miles and yards. I hope that you can see that this says mile and this says yards, and I'm looking for miles and yards, you guys, which tells me that this is the conversion that I need. So I'm going to take this conversion, 1 mile equals 1,760 yards, and I'm going to write it right underneath review question 3. So 1 mile equals 1,760 yards. Now, we can't start at yards, and we can't start at yards because that's where our question mark is. So we need to start where there's the number and the unit name, which means for review question 3, we're starting here at 3 miles. So the biggest piece of advice that I can give you is that we need to line up the unit names. So I'm going to line up miles with mile, okay? Miles and yards are not the same, but miles and mile are the same. So I'll line up my 3 miles here. And then we're going to see how many yards are equal to 3 miles. I can see up top, I'm going from the number 1 to the number 1,760. Well, 1,760 is obviously bigger than the number 1. So that tells me right there, you guys, we're multiplying. And I know that 1 times 1,760 would get me 1,760. Up top, I'm going from miles to yards, front to back. I'm starting at miles and going to yards. On the bottom, I'm still going from miles to yards. I'm not starting at yards. This is what I'm trying to figure out. So I'm still moving in the same direction, miles to yards. And because I'm still moving in the same direction, whatever I'm doing up top, I'm doing on the bottom. So if I multiplied by 1,760 up top, well, then I'm going to multiply by 1,760 on the bottom too. I don't want to put this big number on the bottom. I don't want to. When you multiply like 3 times 1,760, I want to put the big number 1,760 up top. I don't want to have that many numbers on the bottom. We've never had that many numbers on the bottom. So then we're multiplying with this 3. 3 times 0 is 0. 3 times 6 is 18. 8's on the bottom, 1's up top. 3 times 7 is 21. 21 plus 1 is 22. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 plus 2 is 5. Which tells me that in 3 miles, there are 5,280 yards. So what I'm trying to get you guys to see is, as long as you're still moving from the same starting point, as long, like, let's say, you know, you started with tons. As long as you're going from tons to pounds, as long as you're going from years to days, or miles to yards, as long as you're starting with the same unit on the top and the bottom, then you're going to be multiplying on the top and the bottom. But when we're starting at a different unit on the bottom than we did up top, then we have to do the opposite thing. So I want to show you, let's say maybe 6. We'll practice with 6 of them. So we'll still come back because we still need our conversions, but I'm going to just maybe write on this page so that way I can easily flip and see what I'm looking at. So let's say that these are still practice. So those were review questions. So then we can say that this is our practice question number 1, okay? And we'll do 6 of them together. Let's say I'm asking you 24 feet is equal to some amount of yards. Okay? Pretty basic so far. Pretty similar to what we've been looking at. This is obviously where I have my question mark because that's my missing piece of information. And I'm still going to underline the unit names. Okay? Because it still tells me what I'm looking for. This tells me I need a conversion that's talking about feet and yards. Well, if here are my conversions list for customary conversions, see if you can find me a conversion that's talking about feet and yards. You should be able to tell me that it's right here. Okay, feet and yards. So that tells me that for number 1, this is the conversion that I'm going to use. So underneath my number 1, I'm going to write down that 1 yard equals 3 feet. Now here's where things are different because we can't start with yards. Where we're given the number and the unit name is over here with our 24 feet. But we have to line up the unit names. If we're going to start at feet, I cannot line the feet up with the yards because they're 2 different words. They're 2 different unit names. So if I'm going to start here at 24 feet, well, then I'm going to line up my feet with my feet. I'm going to say, or I'm going to write 24 feet right underneath 3 feet. Now we're still trying to figure out how many yards that's equal to. Okay, up top, if you focus on the one up top, 1 yard equals 3 feet, the conversion that we wrote down, up top, we're going from a 1 to a 3. Up top, the number is getting bigger because we're going from 1 to 3, and 3 is bigger than 1. So up top, we are multiplying. And I know that 1 times 3 is going to get me 3. But I want you to realize that up top, we're going from yards to feet. I want you to look here. Am I starting with the yards still? No, I'm not. I'm not starting with the yards. And I can't start with the yards, you guys, because that's where my question mark is. That's where I have missing information. Up top, we're going from yards to feet. But we don't know the yards. So I can't, this is not, it looks like a weird 3 maybe. It's a question mark. I can't go from yards, to feet on the bottom. I'm not starting at yards. I am starting here at feet. So now on the bottom, I'm not going in the same direction. You see my arrows pointing on this side, and now my arrows pointing on the opposite side? I'm no longer going from yards to feet. On the bottom, I'm going from feet to yards. I'm going in the opposite direction. So whenever you're going in the opposite direction, you have to use the opposite operation. It's called an inverse operation. But if you think about it, if we've been multiplying up top and now we have to do the opposite thing, well, what's the opposite of multiplication? Division. So I'm going to still use this 3 right here. But instead of me multiplying by 3, if I'm going to go in the opposite way, the opposite direction, I'm going to use the opposite operation. And the opposite of multiplication is division. So on the bottom, instead of me multiplying by 3, well, now I'm going to divide by 3. So what we're really doing here, you guys, is we're setting up 24 divided by 3. Okay? Our big number, 24, is inside the bracket divided by 3 on the outside. Now, I know that there are a ton of you where division is just, that's not your thing. Okay, facts for division, not your thing, and that's fine. But what I do expect you to try to do is let's list your facts for 3. If you don't know how many times 3 can go into 24 without going over, fine. But start at 3, because that's your number, and add up 3 more. You're at 3, so that's 4, 5, 6, because that's 3 fingers. 7, 8, 9, 3 more fingers. 10, 11, 12, 3 more fingers. You're at 12, 13, 14, 15. That's 3 more fingers. You're at 15, 16, 17, 18. That's 3 more fingers. I got to get as close to 24 as I can. I'm only at 18, so it tells me I got to keep going. I'm at 18, 19, 20, 21. 3 more fingers. I'm at 21, 22, 23, 24. Now, I know that I can stop. But I know that I can stop because I needed to get to 24. Well, I did get to 24. So for me to be able to figure out how many times 3 goes into 24, that's 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, 8 times. So that tells me that 24 divided by 3 is 8. But if 24 divided by 3 is 8, that tells me that in 24 feet, there are 8 yards. Let's try another one, and I want to do yards and feet again, just because I want us to be able to practice. So let's say, we'll try it. Let's say that this is number 2. Let's say 36 feet is equal to some amount of yards. Now, trust me, I know that there are some of you that are already going to know what the answer is. So if you feel like you're good, then skip ahead a little bit. If we get the same answer, keep going through it. If you're like, I have no idea what's going on, then just watch, okay? That's what I'm here for. So let's say we're here. Now, we already did feet and yards. Same thing, feet and yards, okay? Same 2 unit names. So when you look at the conversion list, we're still using feet and yards. Okay, so we're going to use the same conversion that we did for number 1 on number 2 because it's the same 2 unit names. Still working with feet and yards. So for number 2, I know the conversion needs to be 1 yard equals 3 feet. Now, you guys, we can't start here at yards. And we can't start here at yards because that's where we have our missing piece. So that tells me for number 2, I need to start at feet because that's where I have the number and the unit name. But remember, we need to line up our units. So if we're going to start at 36 feet, I can't put the feet underneath the yards because yard and feet, they're not the same word. If we're going to start at feet, then I need to line up my feet with my feet. So we're trying to figure out how many yards are equal to 36 feet. But if this is where we're starting, that's important information. Up top, we're going from 1 yard to 3 feet. Up top, our number is going to get bigger because we're going from a 1 to a 3, and 3 is bigger than 1. So when your number is going bigger, you're multiplying. 1 times 3 is 3. But we're multiplying when we're going from yards to feet. We're not starting at yards on the bottom because that's where our question mark is. So we're not moving in the same direction on the bottom that we did on the top. On the bottom, we're going to start at feet and we're going to work backwards or go in the opposite direction because now we're going from feet to yards. If you can see, my arrow is not pointing in the same direction anymore. My arrow's over here up top and now it's on this side on the bottom. They don't match up. So up top, yards to feet. On the bottom, feet to yards. You're just looking at where you have your information. So if we go back, sorry, it's super close to me. If we go back and we look at the review questions, the arrows are all pointing in the same direction. Okay, tons to pounds, years to days, miles to yards. The arrows are always pointing in the same direction. Here, they're not. Here, we were going yards to feet, and then feet to yards. Again, yards to feet, now feet to yards. But because we're not going in the same way, you guys, because we're working backwards, we're starting at a different spot now, we have to use the inverse operation. So we're still going to use that 3, but instead of multiplying by 3, because I'm starting from feet to yards on the bottom, it's not the same as the top, I'm not going to multiply, I'm going to divide. So here I'm going to divide by 3. So that tells me that I need to do 36 divided by 3. 36, you guys, would be inside the bracket. We are dividing by 3. Sorry, there's a car alarm going off and I'm pretty sure it's my car. So, oh no, it's my neighbor's, not me. Cool. Okay, so I already, oops, I don't know what I'm doing. I already had listed on number 1, like my multiples of 3. So I'm just gonna go through and do the same thing. So because we're dividing by 3, that's where I'm gonna start. If you're at 3 and you add 3 more, we're at 6. Add 3 more, we were at 9. We added 3 more, we were at 12. Then we went to 15, to 18, to 21, to 24. And that's where we were able to stop for number 1 because we only needed to get to 24. I need to go even farther because now I need to get to 36. So I was at 3, we got 6, 9. Let's do 12, 15, 18, 21. Let's do 24, okay, because that's where we stopped up top. So 24, 25, 26, 27, because that's 3 more fingers. We're at 27, so 28, 29, and 30, that's 3 more fingers. We're at 30, 31, 32, 33, because that's 3 more fingers. We're at 33, 34, 35, 36. Now I can stop because I needed to get to 36, and now I am at 36. So when we count, this was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. It took me 12 times to count down to get to my number of 36, which tells me that 36 divided by 3 is 12. So in 36 feet, there are 12 yards. So I think I want to do 4 more questions, but I want to do maybe just 2 other conversions, like 2 other, conversions, I guess I'll say that, so that we can practice. So let's say here then, let's say that this, you guys, would be number 3. So then for number 3 and number 4, we're going to use the same conversion. And then for 5 and 6, we'll use the same conversion or a different conversion from 3 and 4, but those 2 will go together also. Let's say for number 3, let's do 84 inches. Is equal to 7 feet. Okay? So this, oh, you guys, I gave it to you. I can't. That's fine. We'll change it. Let's say 72 inches is equal to some amount of feet. All right, so that's fine. Okay. This obviously is where my question mark would be, but here, my inches and my feet, that's telling me what conversion I'm looking for. So I'll show you the conversions. I need you to try to find me something that's talking about inches and feet. If you're having a hard time seeing it, it's actually this first one where it says 1 foot equals 12 inches. So I know I said inches and feet, but this is the singular one, 1 foot. Because plural, more than 1 foot would start to be feet. So you have one right foot, 1 left foot, but you have 2 feet altogether. So this is a singular and feet is plural. So if I'm going to use this conversion right here, then I'm going to write down my conversion. 1 yard equal, nope, I can't talk anymore. 1 foot equals 12 inches. We cannot start at the feet, you guys, and we can't start at the feet because that's where the question mark is. But that tells me then that we're going to start at the inches. But remember, we have to line up our inches, so we can't do inches underneath the foot because that's not the same unit name. So I'm going to line up my inches with my inches. Okay, this is where we have our question mark, some amount of feet. If you can see up top, we're going from a 1 to a 12, which means up top, our number is getting bigger because 12 is bigger than 1. But then that tells me up top, I'm multiplying. If it's getting bigger, it's multiplying. Well, 1 times 12 is 12. But I'm not going from feet to inches on the bottom because I need to start over here at the inches. That's where I have the number and the unit name. So now on the bottom, my arrow is going to be pointing in the opposite direction. My arrow's not going from feet to inches on the bottom. On the bottom, it's going from inches to feet. It's going backwards. It's working backwards. But if it's working backwards, it's going in the opposite direction, then I need to do the opposite of multiplication. And the opposite of multiplication, you guys, is division. I'm still going to divide by the same number. I'll still divide by 12. I just can't multiply. Now, 12 is a bigger number. I know that. And what this is asking you to do is to do the big number inside the bracket, so 72. Divided by 12. You don't have to know it off the top of your head, but you can make a T-chart for 12. So I'm going to do that over here. Let's do 12. 12 times 1 is 12, so 12 times 2 is 24. Times 3 would be 36. Then I would be at 48. If I added 12 more, or if I do 12 times 5, I'd be at 60. And if I added 12 more, or I multiplied by 6, I'd be at 72. And I know that this is going to be 6 because 12 times 1 was 12. 12 times 2 was 24. Times 3 was 36. Times 4 was 48. Times 5 was 60. And times 6 is 72. But I know that I can stop at 72 because that's my number, you guys. So because 72 times 12 is 6, because you count down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, that means that there, in 72 inches, there are 6 feet. I want to do another one where we're working backwards, but I want to use 1 foot and 12 inches again. So let's say, we'll go over here so we're not writing on the back of writing. I don't want to confuse you guys. Okay, let's say 48 inches equals some amount of feet. Well, I know the conversion for inches and feet because we just used it. And I know it's got to be inches and feet because those are the 2 unit names that I have. And I know right now I can't start at feet because that's where my question mark is. So I know that the conversion is 1 foot equals 12 inches. I cannot start at feet because that's where my question mark is, which means I'm going to start at inches because that's where I have the number and the unit name. But I have to line up my units correctly. I can't just put inches underneath feet. I have to put inches underneath inches. So here's where I'm going to put 48 inches. Here's where I have, I don't know, some amount of feet. If you can think up top, I'm going from a 1 to a 12. Up top, my number is going to get bigger because 12 is bigger than 1. So up top, we're multiplying. Because the number is getting bigger, we multiply. And 1 times 12 is 12. But if you can see on the bottom, we can't go from feet to inches because we're not starting at feet. And we're not starting at feet because that's where we have the question mark. On the bottom, we're working backwards. On the bottom, we're going from inches to feet. My arrows are not pointing in the same direction. This one's pointing at inches, this one's pointing at feet. But because they're not pointing in the same direction, that means I'm doing the opposite. They're pointing in opposite directions. So I'm going to do the opposite of multiplication. Instead of multiplying, I'm going to divide. I'll still do 12 because that's my number. That's my number I need to use, but I'm just not going in the same direction. So I'm not going to multiply on the bottom. I'm going to divide. But what this looks like, you guys, is big number inside the bracket, 48, divided by 12. Well, we've just made a T-chart for 12. Okay, we need to get to 48. Well, I see 48 right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Count down 4 times. It says times 4. That means that 12 times 4 is 48. And if 12 times 4 is 48, that means 48 divided by 12 is 4. So in 48 inches, there are 4 feet. I'd like to do one more, and I think I want to do, let's maybe do ounces and pounds, okay? So we'll do 5 and 6 using ounces and pounds, and we'll try that. We'll do that. Okay, so let's say for number 5 then, we'll do 64 ounces is equal to some amount of pounds. So this is obviously where I have my little question mark, but I can see here that I need to find a conversion that's talking about ounces and pounds because those are the 2 unit names I have for number 5. So we'll go back and let's find a conversion for ounces and pounds. Right here, it says 1 pound equals 16 ounces. But because they're talking about ounces and pounds, that tells me that's the conversion that I'm going to use. So I'm going to write down 1 pound equals 16 ounces, because that was the conversion. I can see I have to start with my ounces because that's where I have the number and the unit name, but we have to remember we have to line up the units. So my ounces have to be with my ounces. They have to be right on top of each other. So I'll put my 64 ounces down here. Okay, and we're trying to figure out how many pounds that's equal to. Well, on the top, we're going from a 1 to a 16. So on the top, the number is getting bigger because 16 is bigger than 1. But remember, anytime it's getting bigger, multiplication. And 1 times 16 is 16. We're not going from pounds to ounces on the bottom. We're starting at ounces and we're working our way back to pounds. So because the arrows aren't pointing in the same direction, this one's pointing over towards ounces and this one's pointing over towards pounds, they're working in opposite directions. And because we're going in the opposite direction, instead of multiplying, the opposite of multiplication is division. We'll keep the number 16, but now we're going to be dividing instead of multiplying by 16. So what this looks like is this bigger number, 64, inside the bracket, divided by 16. This means that we need to make a T-chart for 16. Let's just we'll go to 9. Now, you're obviously watching the video, but I would like for you to try to make a T-chart for 16 because we're going to do another one where we're going to use ounces and pounds again. So you're going to need a T-chart twice. But I would like for you to fill out your T-chart, and then when you're ready, you can unpause the video and we'll see if we get the same answers. You should be making a T-chart for 16. Okay, if you did it on your own, which I hope that you did, I know that 16 times 1 is 16. I'm at 32. Let's see, 32 plus 16 more, that's 8, 48. Plus 16 more, that would be 14. That's 4, 5, and 6, so then I'm at 64. Plus 14 more, this is going to be 78. I'm just adding 14 every time, you guys. Sorry, it's blurry. I'm at 78, so I want to do 14. That's 9, 10, 11, and 12. That's 7, 8, and 9. I'm at 92. I want to add 14 more. That's 6. 9 plus 1 is 10, so I'm at 106. Plus 14 more. 6 and 4 is 10. That's 1 and 2 and 1. I'm at 120. And then that should get me to 134. I just want to double check. So I'm just going to try 14 times 5 and see if I get 78 because that's what I have right here. Wait. Oh, it's 16. Oh no. Oh, you guys. I'm a mess. I started adding 14 and not 16. So this is wrong. Okay. That should be 48. That should still be 64. So then we have to start over from 64. I'm sorry, you guys. This is my fault. I started doing 14 instead of 16. So 16, I want to double check really quickly. I'm sorry. 16 times 4 should be 64. That's right. Okay, so then we need to do 16 times 5. So I'm at 64. So plus 16, that's 10, 6, 7, and 8. So then this should be 80. Plus 16 should be 96. So then I'm at 96, and I want to add 16. 6 plus 6, sorry, I'm over here, I'm sorry, is 12. That's 9, 10, and 11. So I'm at 112. And then I want to add 16. So it's 6, 7, and 8. That's 2, that's 1. I'm at 128. And then I need 128 plus 16. That is 14. That's 2, 3, and 4. And then 144. So I tried 16 times 4, got 64. I'm just double checking because I already messed up once and I don't want to mess up again. I'm going to try 16 times 6 and see if I get 96. 6 times 6 is 36. That's 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's perfect. Let's try 16 times 8 and see what we get. I just want to double check. That's 48. That's 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. 128. Perfect. Okay, good. So that should be it. Okay. Jeez. All right. So all of that. I really need to get to 64. Okay, because we were doing 64 divided by 16. So then we'll look at our T-chart, my messy T-chart, and you find me as close to 64 as you can get. Well, right here is 64, and it tells me it goes in 4 times. That means that 64 divided by 16, all that work later, is 4. So in 64 ounces, there are 4 pounds. All right, we're going to do one more together, and we're going to use my horrible T-chart for 16. And is our last one. So let's say this is number 6. And let's say, because we already have the work done, can't talk, we already have the work done. Let's say 112 ounces equals some amount of pounds. I'm going to give you the conversion of 1 pound equals 16 ounces. And then I want you to do the rest. I want you to tell me how many pounds are equal to 112 ounces. I want you to work through it. Okay, I'll show you my T-chart. When you're ready and you have an answer, unpause your video. All right. So I hope that you lined up ounces and ounces. Okay, we can't start at pounds because that's where our question mark is. We have to start at ounces. And we're trying to figure out how many pounds that's equal to. It's a question mark. I can see up top I'm going from 1 to 16. So that means my number is getting bigger. And because my number is getting bigger, we're multiplying. But I'm not going from pounds to ounces on the bottom. I'm now going from ounces to pounds. So because my arrow is going in the opposite direction, because I'm working backwards or moving backwards, I'm going to do the opposite of multiplication, which is division. We're really looking at 112 divided by 16. But remember, we already made our T-chart. And I can see that 16 goes into 112, 7 times. So if 16 times 7 is 112, then 112 divided by 16 is 7. Which means that in 112 ounces, there should be 7 pounds. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you 2 exit ticket questions, and I'm going to give you 1 for inches and feet, working backwards, and 1 for pounds and ounces, working backwards. All right. If you need help, please rewatch the video, okay? Make a T-chart. You guys are going to be fine. All right. Good luck.